Welcome to Disrupt the Flow. Today, we are driving into how AI is transforming procurement amongst other technologies. From streamlining sourcing to optimizing supplier relationships, AI-driven procurement intelligence is unlocking new levels of efficiency and cost savings. We are excited to dive into the world of tech-driven procurement.
Thank you, Neha. For that, we're excited to have Lihe here from Upstream.ai, a company that is pioneering AI-powered procurement automation. We'll discuss the industry challenges, real-world success stories, and how businesses can leverage AI to stay competitive. Did you know that inefficient procurement processes can cost companies over 15% of their spend due to overpaying, fraud, inefficient processes, and supply chain disruptions? Today, we'll explore how tech and AI specifically are helping to reverse that trend. All right, let's get started.
Lihe, tell us, when you are not the CEO, what are you doing?
First of all, thanks for having me here. I'm really excited to be here with both of you. When I'm not the CEO of Upstream, I think that out of 24 hours a day, about 20 hours a day, I'm the CEO of Upstream. But when I take some time off or before Upstream, I love to travel. I'm a very big foodie. I really like going to good restaurants. I like to cook. I like everything that has to do with food. And I love to explore the world. I think that I've been to about 30 countries by now and counting. This is my real passion out of tech and procurement and startups, traveling. So first of all, I think that tech and AI is everywhere. It's not only procurement. You cannot live in 2025 without thinking about tech and AI. Procurement over the last 10, 15 years changed so much. It used to be a very centralized task within an organization. A procurement person or a procurement department knew everything that has to do with their category. You did not have a lot of data that you needed to control in order to be able to procure. You now have so many vendors in each categories. You need to know so much about different regulations in different countries, in different states, in different verticals. And those regulations change all the time. There is no possible way for one human being to do what a procurement person used to do 15 years ago. So now there are two options. Either you hire a lot of procurement people. Each one will not only be responsible for a category, but a combination of a category in a location with the difference between each company and each compliance, or you start to embed technology and AI to orchestrate all these different data points and basically be able to answer a lot of the questions before you even knew that you need to ask them.
That's very interesting. I guess in the networks right now, they're very decentralized. What you're buying, where you're buying, especially if you're a global company, how do you actually bring that together, leveraging technology to make people's job easier? That makes sense.
And a related question, Lihe, would be, so the poor procurement visibility that you talked about in your conversations with a lot of procurement officers, and I know you did about 400 interviews when you started this journey, what was the theme that emerged around impact of this poor procurement visibility on cost control and supplier management? Where is the pain felt?
So all over the place. I'll be very honest. When I look at our users today, the power users that we call, when I look at the customers on our platform, we see people that log into the platform every day. That's what I call power users, from so many different departments in the company. It's relevant to procurement, but the job of procurement in the last 10, 15 years moved to be Where is that with legal? Did the compliance officer look at this? Did legal have all the information before they needed to review? Hey, this does not reach the threshold of finance, but we actually need IT to get involved because it does involve IT. Procurement people were the gateway to just understand who from the company need to be involved when. And this is the basic thing that technology can solve. That's the very basic. That's even before I speak about AI. Just ask a simple question. Who needs to be involved from the company? What is the information that person need to have before getting involved? How many times your legal department got involved in procurement just to say, oh, they did not sign an NDA. Here is the NDA. I will now sit aside, forget about this task till the NDA is back. And then the NDA is back. Maybe I'm on vacation that week. Maybe Amanda from my team needs to take over. The point is, don't involve legal before the system verify there is a signed NDA. Very simple. That's even before AI.
Exactly. Okay. The biggest pain points you're hearing are around making sure that the right processes are followed and the right stakeholders have the right information to make decisions, right? How do you then take it to the next level in terms of additional capabilities that you can bring?
So I'll take a step back because what I described is the tactical pain point. What does it mean that we have this tactical challenge? It means two things. One, that you need to hire way more people, which cost more on every step of the way. But the other one is, in my opinion, the biggest hurdle companies ignore. The fact is that supply chain and procurement takes way longer than they should. Now, at the beginning, when you look at this statement, you are like, okay, maybe it's not that bad that it takes me time to spend money because I control my cost. The problem is that we're speaking about businesses buying in order to promote the business. If as a business you need to buy, whether it is material for your supply chain or an indirect purchase for your software or a conference, you need to buy it to promote your business. You need to buy it fast. If you do not have a way to buy fast and responsible, you limit the level of innovation that your company can do. And that's the strategic challenge with making procurement very slow in companies. Now to Julian's question about, so what can we do to solve that? There are three levels on how we can look at this problem and the possible solutions. One is data. When you look at how companies manage their purchasing process today, mainly when you look at big enterprises, data is all over the place. You do not have, in Fortune 500 companies, you have dozens of ERPs only for the financial side. Then you have contract lifecycle management times the number of M&As that this company had. Then you have another compliance tool. Then you have another InfoSec tool, a ticketing system for compliance. It's all over the place. And I didn't even start to speak about the HRIS that is involved. The data is all over the place. And mainly, the data does not have any key identifier between it. This means that all the solutions of all the transformation that companies tried to do, most of them failed just because cleanup of the data. Instead of cleaning up the data, let's move to the solution, put an orchestration layer above all these different data points. You don't really need to consolidate the data to one place. If you have access to all these data points in different systems and have a layer on top that knows to ask the right questions, that's where AI comes into place. You can start asking cross-functional questions between the different platforms because you create one set of data model. So you can reach out to all those different systems and ask questions and consolidate. Without consolidating the data, you can consolidate the answers.
This is fantastic, Lihe. And you did touch about the fragmented landscape of softwares that individuals in procurement have to work with. Even on the decision-making side, when they're looking to buy a software, in our past experience as consultants, often we've gone in helping companies make the decision on what is the right software to bring in for XYZ so that the overlapping capabilities are minimized and integration points are easier. Is there an easier way to accomplish that versus outsourcing to services with all the tech enablement we're talking about?
And maybe one thing I would add, Neha and Lihe, in most cases, the ROI is not there when you're trying to consolidate all the different systems across 12 companies that you acquire, right? The timeline to actually get it there takes 2 to 3 years, just because of resources and the complexity they have. In many cases, that is not even an option. To Neha's question, how do you actually achieve or build this layer on top to orchestrate all that information to make sure the company can move forward with speed and be competitive?
Perfect questions. So that's exactly where AI comes into place. And I'll say one word for our listeners generally about AI, and then I'll explain what's the relevancy. In the last 2 years, when we say the AI buzzword, most people out there mainly think about Gen AI, mainly think about, okay, let's write something in a language that human being can read, reply in a language that human being can understand. But this is not AI. This is Gen AI, an application on top of machine learning and actual LLMs that sit behind. In order to do a very smart orchestration, you need two things. A, you need data. And B, you need the ability to know to analyze the data in a smart way that can be done automatically. What we do when we integrate, and I'm very happy, Julian, that you mentioned the time that it takes traditional procurement platforms or ERP platforms to get implemented is in years. When we speak about Upstream, we speak about between weeks and very few months, depends on the complexity. The reason is mainly our AI engine that does most of the uplift of the integrations. What do I mean by that? When you connect Upstream to any of those third-party platforms, let's say to your ERP, and let's say your ERP has 10,000 fields. In the old days, or in the consultant world, someone needed to review the 10,000 fields and identify which one is relevant to vendor onboarding process and which one is mandatory for vendor onboarding process. This is something that our AI engine does the minute you connect us to your ERP. We know in a split of a second, you have 10,000 fields. Out of them, 200 are relevant to vendor onboarding. Out of them, 50 are mandatory for vendor onboarding. Now let's focus only on those 50. But it doesn't stop when we integrate. We then continue to listen to every time you change a field in your ERP and define it as mandatory for the process automated through Upstream, your Upstream admin will get a notification, and our recommendation is that this is the change you need to do. Do you confirm that? That's the real AI. I can speak more about Gen AI, which is sexy and people really like, but the real value for the industry is the behind the scene AI.
Got it. That makes sense. And then who are the users, Lihe, if you're thinking about a company, who actually then goes on and uses this, right? Because the procurement teams are typically quite large. So how do you actually want to interface with this and continue to improve it at the end of the day?
So I'll split my answer into who we work with to make sure you have the right processes in the company and to configure the platform versus who logs into the system and actually uses it. And I'll start with the later, everyone. The only point of having a good procurement platform is to have your entire company on it. If you do not have John from marketing, the new associate that just joined, and his only purchase in the next year is one laptop, it means that you do not have visibility to your entire procurement processes and your spend. That's why, by the way, unlike traditional SaaS solutions and unlike traditional procurement platform, we never charge by seat because the entire company is on the platform from day one. One of the KPIs that we measure is how many people of the company are using the platform. And our goal, and I'm happy to say that with most of our customers, our goal is more than 90% of the company actually uses the platform. But there was a second piece. Who is the admin? Who is the one that really cares about the platform? Who needs to define the processes? Usually the owner. In the smaller organizations, companies of about 1,000 to 2,000 employees, it's the procurement person. In larger organizations, it will be procurement operations. There is actually a role called procurement operations. But those individuals will not work in silo. The goal of procurement orchestration is to come and say, hey, stop working in silo. Everyone needs to participate. They will be the point of contact, but legal will need to approve the workflow. And compliance will need, and finance, of course, will need an FP&A. Otherwise, you did not create a cross-functional process.
One of the constant pain points I saw during my time in supply chain, as well as a consultant, was that in a tech stack that is already complicated, when you're bringing in a new incumbent, there are modules that overlap. When making a buying decision, a lot of times deep involvement of external consultants as well as internal teams in identifying where is the exact need and where is the extra thick in the system that you're paying for. That has historically been a lot of humans in the loop and often consultants paid for. Where do you see tech fitting in there?
Perfect question, because when we started Upstream about 3 years ago, we started from this problem. What really came up from our initial market interviews is exactly this problem. It starts with the tech stack. Very hard for companies today to know if they already have a solution that does something similar. You might have a Calendly, and then your CRM also have embedded in it a calendar meeting option that you don't need to pay for. Or you might have, someone wants to use Monday, but you already have ClickUp and Asana and Trello in the company. This is a great example, and actually the first AI model that we had in the platform. When a user comes to Upstream today and search, let's use Apollo for sales. A person comes in and wants to buy Apollo. You already use outreach in the company in a different department. Upstream will identify that and will flag it out for you and will say, hey, maybe instead of waiting 3 months to get approved for Apollo, get a new license for outreach with a click of a button. But you can also decide to continue with Apollo. We will ask you on the fly what's not good with the other one. And then We can even ask you, okay, if we prove that you purchased the other one, can we sunset the alternative 3 months after this contract is being signed? If the answer is yes, we will automatically start a process in 3 months' time that you will not forget about it. And in 3 months' time, the owner of the other product will get a notification that a process started, and does he approve to eliminate or to sunset the other one. This is actually one of our best loved features, and companies use it all the time.
Now, stepping into our chief procurement officer's shoes, are you able to translate these into what does it mean in terms of hard savings for companies and dollarize the impact?
The truth is that yes and no. We can speak percentages with a specific company, but most companies, mainly in the software space, that claim they have benchmarking on how much you would have paid do not have accurate data. Why is that? Because you're not doing your job as a procurement person if you ever paid list price. No one pays list price in the industry, mainly if you're a company that has a procurement person. The reason it is so complicated to compare those tools is because it's never that two tools do the exact same. Maybe you're using this component from that tool with a combination of the other tool. It's not a zero-sum game. And the truth is that, to my surprise, this is not something that procurement people actually want. What they do want, and what we allow them to have, is to have a manual attribute that actually have like original price minus final price is what this specific procurement person saved to the company, and then have a dashboard that you present to management how much you individually saved for your company. To Julian's comment at the beginning of the podcast, what we see is that over time, just organizing your procurement process save about 15% to your company spend. This happens about a year after you start with the new processes.
Perfect. That's super helpful. Lihe, and at the end of the day, you need to track the impact, right? Because you need to track the ROI. So early on, taking the time to identify what are those metrics, which, as you said, for every company could be different, but tracking them accordingly, I think that's the best way to make sure you're going to be successful. The second thing is, for companies out there, the referrals, the adoption that you have in other companies is really what drives whether you're successful or not. So you can say a lot of things around what percentage was saved, but at the end of the day, are they going to recommend you to others? That has been my experience. Any comments, experience that you have as people think about whether to buy it or build it, whatever process they have or product they're buying? How do you think about that?
I agree. We published a blog post specifically about this question that I'll be happy to share afterwards. I think that generally in the world today, not only procurement related, we tend to buy way more than to build. And rightly, because your company doesn't have the resources or the knowledge to be an expert in everything. So it doesn't really make sense to build internally instead of buy. Specifically with procurement, what I see in smaller companies is that there is sometimes a tendency, mainly in tech companies, to say, okay, let's take ServiceNow or Jira or any of those tools and just create a workflow. What's the big deal? It's a workflow at the end of the day. But then you end up having someone full-time maintaining that. Every change to the industry, let's take a real life example. The European Union are now going to finally say what is ESG, how do you measure ESG, what companies in Europe really need to report on ESG. Once this is finalized, we'll start getting into the race of, oh no, how do I do that? All procurement people around the world will need to start reporting on the new ESG compliance regulation that will be defined, not what they defined internally as ESG till now. How will they do that? They will now find the IT person that is responsible on ServiceNow that, let me guess, that IT person doesn't even know the words, what does ESG mean? And they will define it internally instead of getting someone that does it for all of their customers in a click of a button. It just doesn't really make sense.
Thank you for that, Lihe. Talking about Upstream, would love to know the one or two use cases or case studies of companies that have successfully seen the outputs in terms of using AI and tech in procurement. What were some of the challenges before, and how did it help them solve those?
Perfect. Of course, I'm always happy to share stories about our customers. I will give two examples. One will be on the smaller size of a company. Let's take LastPass. LastPass, a company of about 1,000 employees, used to be a public company, then moved to be a private company. And they are using Upstream for more than 2 years now. And they use us to our full orchestration power, meaning they are connected to quite a few different systems in place, including their ERP and their ticketing system, and of course their Slack and email and single sign-on. They contribute about 50% of the spend the procurement organization was able to provide to the company, the use of Upstream instead of hiring additional people, and that the entire company is on Upstream. So they say that about 50% of what the procurement people were able to save just by focusing on strategic initiatives. Another example I will give is from the high end of the scale. I will not be able to mention the name of that customer because we are under NDA and are not allowed to mention their name. But this is a very interesting case of a carve-out. So we're speaking here about a carve-out from a Fortune 500 company that a private equity firm carved out a specific line of business out of this Fortune 500 company. This new line of business of about 20,000 employees, by the contract of the carve-out, which is very common, they had 18 months to renegotiate all their vendors. I see, Julian, that you nod your head because you came from McKinsey, those carve-outs. So
not easy.
What happens in a lot of those cases, and specifically in that case, is that the PE assign a new procurement leader to handle those 18 months. That procurement leader doesn't really know how to do it. Why? Because if you go to any of the traditional procurement platform, by the time you finish implementing, those 18 months passed. You don't have time to implement a traditional procurement platform. So he started on Excel, literally built an Excel to do that. This is not the way to handle all the vendors for 20,000 employees. We came in, we were able to go live with less than a month for the initial go live to replace his Excel. And over time, we integrated more and more of the platforms after he had a new contract with those platforms. So after the carve out. Ended up after 18 months with the private equity saying that this was the fastest carve out they ever had. Doing a carve out that you really need to renegotiate all your vendors is a huge moment in time. And there we didn't only save money and time for the company, but actually to the parent company, to the PE. That's their goal, to separate those.
Exactly. Fascinating. There is a lot of examples where if you use the old ways, you're not going to be successful within the time frame that you're given. So that's a great example. Maybe as we near the end, Lihe, of the podcast, would love to get your thoughts on what are the top books or podcasts that you would recommend for procurement leaders or other leaders that are looking to explore this topic further.
My main recommendation would be a person, Dr. Louise Epstein from Carney. She is, in my opinion, the most educated, innovative analyst out there that really knows procurement and supply chain in and out. Everything that Dr. Epstein speaks about, she just started her own podcast, by the way, and she did publish 2 books, as a matter of fact. But everything that Dr. Epstein speaks about, she is ahead of the curve. She's the one that in the last 5 years published twice a year her spider map for procurement to really say what are the innovations in the procurement and supply chain. She just announced that the last spider map that she published about a month ago is the last one, and stay tuned for the new approach. I'm staying tuned.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Lihe. And we'll put the links in the chat so that people can access them easily.
Perfect.
Well, thank you, Lihe. As all of you heard today, AI is not just a buzzword in procurement. We went deep into how Lihe and her team are already transforming vendor selection and management workflow of the procurement, and it's a game changer. If today's discussion sparked new ideas, please connect with Lihe on LinkedIn. We will share all the resources that she spoke about in the link below. Check out Upstream.ai to see how AI-powered procurement can bring efficiencies to the table, and continue to follow us for more meaningful sessions like this.